even know very much about getting married anymore.
Why not?
I'm just not sure.
At 78, Cher's silhouette remains instantly recognizable. The straight posture, the iconic hair, the defiant tilt of her chin. But the emptiness around her speaks volumes. No partner by her side, no mother to call, her son battling his demons far from her reach. The palace she built through 6 decades of reinvention echoes with ghosts. Sonny, Greg, Rob, costumers, directors, and record executives who once orbited her like planets around a sun. Awards gather dust in rooms she rarely enters now. The woman who conquered music, film, Broadway, and fashion stands at the edge of her kingdom, a survivor who has outlived almost everyone who knew her when she was still Sherilyn Sarkeesian, a skinny, dyslexic, half-Armenian girl from El Centro who couldn't fit in anywhere. But to understand how the ultimate survivor became perhaps the loneliest legend in American entertainment, we need to go back to where it all began. This is the untold story of how America's most resilient icon paid the ultimate price for her survival. Beyond the wigs, beyond the comebacks, beyond the tabloid headlines and Twitter wars lies a woman who sacrificed everything, health, love, privacy, and peace, to outrun a childhood that threatened to define her. Today, we'll uncover how Cher's greatest asset, her ability to reinvent herself, became both her superpower and her prison, leaving her, at 78, with unimaginable success but profound loss. If this story moves you, tap like so others can find it, because behind the sequins lies a human story we all need to hear. El Centro, California, 1946. A half-Armenian, half-Cherokee baby girl is born to a mother barely out of her teens and a father who disappeared before she could form memories of him. Sherilyn Sarkeesian entered a post-war America unprepared for a child who would defy every category. Too ethnic for Hollywood's lily-white standards, too poor for comfort, too unconventional for the rigid 1950s. I felt ugly and unwanted, she would later confess. When you're little and you're different, kids are mean. Her mother, Georgia Holt, born Jackie Jean Crouch in Arkansas, was beautiful but restless, cycling through 8 marriages and constant financial insecurity. By age 4, Cher had already lived in foster care while her mother struggled to make ends meet. Home was wherever Georgia could find work as a waitress, occasional actress, or singer. Sometimes that meant a proper apartment. Other times it meant sleeping in the car. "We had no money," Cher once recalled. "My clothes came from whatever my mother could borrow from friends. I wore boys' pants because they lasted longer." Georgia's own trauma, raised in poverty by a mother who once threatened to place her in an orphanage, transferred to her daughter in complicated ways. She taught Cher to be tough, independent, and never to depend on a man. Yet, paradoxically, men cycled through their lives with dizzying frequency. At 10, Cher developed a crippling case of undiagnosed dyslexia. Letters danced across pages. Teachers mistook her learning disability for laziness or defiance. School became a daily humiliation. "I couldn't read out loud. I couldn't comprehend. Kids made fun of me," she later said. The psychological impact was profound and lasting, a wound that would later fuel both her ambition and her insecurities. When Georgia married Gilbert Lapierre, a bank manager who adopted Cher, the family moved to affluent Pasadena. But even there, Cher remained an outsider, the dark-haired, exotic-looking girl among blonde California classmates. Her striking looks, which would later become her trademark, made her a target in the conformist 1950s. At 13, she discovered performing. It wasn't just an interest, it was oxygen. On stage, the dyslexic girl who struggled to read became someone else entirely, someone powerful, someone seen. One day in 9th grade, Cher wandered into the school auditorium during a rehearsal. The drama teacher asked if anyone could do a British accent. Cher, who had spent countless hours mimicking voices on television, volunteered. That moment, her first taste of applause, changed everything. When I performed, nobody cared what I looked like or where I came from. They just saw what I could do. But Georgia's lessons about independence clashed with her daughter's desperate need for connection. Young Cher developed a pattern that would define her romantic life for decades, attaching herself to powerful men who could guide her career while simultaneously resenting their control. At 16, she dropped out of school. Los Angeles in the early 1960s hummed with possibility, and Cher gravitated toward the Sunset Strip music scene. She found work as a dancer at the legendary Whiskey A Go-Go, where the rich and famous came to see and be seen. Her exotic beauty and natural movement caught eyes, but it was her voice, that distinctive husky contralto, that would change her destiny. November 1962, a chance encounter at a Los Angeles coffee shop. 27-year-old Sonny Bono, working for producer Phil Spector, noticed the striking 16-year-old girl. Sonny saw something in Cher that others missed, not just beauty or talent, but a raw hunger to be somebody, to matter. "I couldn't believe he was interested in me," she later said. "He was the first person who ever looked at me and saw something." What began as a professional relationship soon became personal, despite their 11-year age gap. Cher moved into Sonny's apartment, supposedly as a housekeeper. The arrangement satisfied her need for stability, while offering proximity to the music industry she desperately wanted to break into. Yet beneath this seemingly fortunate turn lay the seeds of a pattern that would repeat throughout her life, surrendering her autonomy to men who promised to make her dreams come true, then fighting to reclaim her independence once she outgrew them. The core wound had been planted. A girl abandoned by her father, raised by a mother whose own trauma created an unstable foundation and marked as different in a society that demanded conformity. This wound would drive her toward unimaginable success and unimaginable loneliness. "I got you, babe." 4 words that changed American pop culture forever. August 1965. Sonny and Cher's harmonic declaration of devotion climbs to #1 on the Billboard charts, knocking the Beatles off their perch. Overnight, the unlikely pair, he short and mustachioed, she tall, exotic, and dressed in bell-bottoms, became America's favorite odd couple. Their seemingly mismatched appearance made their love story all the more compelling. The song sold over 1 million copies. Within a year, they had 5 songs in Billboard's Top 40 simultaneously. Their first album, Look at Us, spent 8 weeks at #2. America couldn't get enough of Sonny and Cher, but behind the hippie love facade lay a more complicated reality. Sonny wasn't just Cher's husband and singing partner, he was her manager, producer, and controller. He negotiated their contracts, chose their material, and made all financial decisions. Cher, still barely out of her teens, signed whatever he put in front of her. "I didn't know what I was signing," she later admitted. "I trusted him completely." That trust would prove costly. Their follow-up singles failed to match the success of I Got You, Babe. By 1968, the flower power movement that had embraced them was fading. America's musical tastes were changing. Sonny and Cher seemed increasingly like yesterday's news. Desperate to revive their careers, they invested their own money in a film, 1969's Chastity, written and directed by Sonny as a vehicle for Cher. It flopped spectacularly, losing their entire fortune. At 23, with a newborn daughter and a failing career, Cher found herself back where she started, broke and uncertain. Las Vegas became their lifeline. Playing small rooms to middle-aged audiences who remembered their heyday, Sonny and Cher developed a new act built around their witty banter, particularly Cher's devastating one-liners at Sonny's expense. "We were so poor we couldn't afford a place with heat," she once recalled of this period. "I kept Chastity warm by dressing her in layers and heating bricks in the oven to put under her crib mattress." Yet it was this Vegas act that caught the attention of CBS television executives. The Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour debuted in August 1971 and became an immediate hit, drawing 30 million viewers weekly. Cher, now adorned in Bob Mackie creations that showcased her perfectly toned body, emerged as the show's breakout star. Her deadpan delivery, fashion sense, and undeniable charisma captivated America. But as Cher's star ascended, the marriage crumbled. The power dynamic had shifted. She no longer needed Sonny professionally, a reality he struggled to accept. "Marriage is like betting that someone will be the same person in 20 years that they are. Today," Cher would later say, "I lost that bet." The final blow came in 1972 when Cher discovered that Sonny had been unfaithful and had manipulated their business arrangement to his advantage. She learned that Sonny owned 95% of their publishing company and held her to an exclusive contract that paid her a weekly salary, like an employee, not an equal partner. "I was crushed when I found out," she later said. "I worked as hard as he did, maybe harder, and I had nothing to show for it." In February 1974, Cher filed for divorce, citing involuntary servitude. The tabloids feasted on their disintegration. Their TV show was canceled despite its popularity. At 27, Cher stood at a crossroads: return to obscurity or forge a new path alone. She chose the harder road. Her first solo television effort, Cher, premiered in 1975. Critics were skeptical that she could carry a show without Sonny. They underestimated her. The show became a hit, showcasing her versatility and introducing her to a new generation through musical numbers with artists like Elton John, Bette Midler, and David Bowie. But as her professional life soared, her personal life resembled a turbulent soap opera. Days after her divorce from Sonny was finalized, she married Southern rock star Gregg Allman. The marriage lasted just 9 days before she filed for divorce, citing his heroin addiction. In a pattern that would become familiar, she returned to him, had his son Elijah Blue, then left again when his substance abuse made family life impossible. "I'm a terrible picker," she would later reflect. "I keep choosing men who need fixing, but you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed." The late 1970s brought both triumph and heartbreak. Her albums Stars and Black Rose flopped commercially. Critics dismissed her as a variety show personality trying to be a serious musician. The disco era that might have embraced her came and went. By 1980, as she approached her mid-30s, ancient by female pop star standards, many considered her career effectively over. But Cher had other ideas. In 1982, she made a bold pivot to Broadway, then film. Her performance in Robert Altman's Come Back to the Five and Dime Jimmy Dean revealed something critics never expected. Cher could act, really act. Director Mike Nichols cast her in Silkwood opposite Meryl Streep. The role of Dolly Pellicker, a lesbian plant worker, earned Cher her first Academy Award nomination. Those who had dismissed her as merely a Bob Mackie mannequin were forced to reconsider. "I think people were shocked," she later reflected. "They thought I was just this chick who twirled around in Bob's outfits and sang. They didn't expect me to have depth." The Hollywood establishment, initially resistant to accepting the former variety show host, couldn't ignore her raw talent. Mask, 1985, The Witches of Eastwick, 1987, and finally Moonstruck, 1987, cemented her status as a legitimate actress. For her portrayal of Loretta Castorini in Moonstruck, Cher won the Academy Award for Best Actress. At the podium, Oscar in hand, she famously said, "I don't think this means I'm somebody, but I guess I'm on my way." The line revealed the persistent insecurity beneath the confident exterior, the half-Armenian girl from El Centro still seeking validation. As her acting career peaked, Cher staged yet another reinvention. Her 1987 rock album, Cher, marked a return to music after a 5-year absence, but it was 1989's Heart of Stone that restored her to pop dominance. The album sold 3 million copies in the U.S. alone, powered by the hit single If I Could Turn Back Time. The controversial video, featuring Cher in a barely-there outfit aboard a Navy battleship, was initially banned by MTV before becoming one of their most requested clips. At 43, when most female pop stars had long since been relegated to the nostalgia circuit, Cher had her biggest hit in years. The price? An increasingly punishing physical regimen to maintain her famous figure. "I have to work twice as hard," she admitted then. "I'm competing with girls half my age." This period also brought a new relationship with bagel baker turned film producer Rob Camilletti, 18 years her junior. The tabloids mockingly dubbed him the Bagel Boy, but the relationship lasted 4 years, longer than either of her marriages. "He was the one true love of my life," she would later confess. "And I let him go because I was afraid of what people thought." By the early 1990s, Cher had accomplished what few in entertainment history ever had: conquered music, film, and television. She had an Oscar, an Emmy, a Grammy, and a catalog of hits spanning 3 decades. To the public, she appeared invincible. But success exacted an increasingly heavy toll. Years of grueling tours, film shoots, and personal appearances left her exhausted. The hair extensions, elaborate costumes, and punishing workout regimens required to maintain the Cher image became more difficult with each passing year, and beneath the fame lay a growing sense of isolation. "People think it must be fantastic being Cher," she once said. "They don't realize how lonely it can be. Everyone wants a piece of you, but few people want to know the real you." Then came the diagnosis that would forever change her life. April 1987, a routine dental procedure, a seemingly minor infection that wouldn't go away. After months of fatigue and unexplained symptoms, Cher received the news that would reframe everything. She had contracted the Epstein-Barr virus, a debilitating condition that causes extreme fatigue, muscle weakness, and cognitive difficulties. For someone whose career depended on her physical vitality, who regularly performed 2-hour concerts while dancing in revealing costumes, the diagnosis was devastating. But the worst was yet to come. "I was sick for 2 years," she later revealed. "There were days I couldn't lift my head from the pillow." The woman America had watched transform from hippie singer to Oscar-winning actress to ageless pop icon now struggled with the most basic tasks. The virus attacked her in waves, leaving her bedridden for weeks, then granting brief periods of normalcy before crashing down again. Her career momentum stalled. Film roles went to younger actresses. Her music label questioned her viability. And in the pre-internet era, with no visible symptoms, many in the industry whispered that she was difficult, unreliable, or simply making excuses. "People thought I was being dramatic," she recalled, "but I was fighting to function. I'd never experienced anything like it." The timing couldn't have been worse. At the height of her career renaissance, Cher found herself facing not just an uncertain professional future, but a fundamental question. Who was she if she couldn't be Cher? The illness forced a reckoning that forever changed her relationship with her body, her fame, and her mortality. The invincible icon had met her match, not in a career setback or a failed relationship, but in her own fragile humanity. The Epstein-Barr diagnosis marked the beginning of a dark period that few fans fully understood. The public saw only her occasional appearances, still glamorous, still iconic, not the private struggle happening behind closed doors. By 1990, as Cher approached her mid-40s, Hollywood's notorious ageism created another crisis. The roles that once came easily now went to actresses in their 20s and 30s. Studio executives who had courted her after Moonstruck stopped calling. The Oscar winner found herself in the same position as countless actresses before her, sidelined by an industry that worshipped youth. "I'd won an Oscar," she later said. "I thought that would protect me. It didn't." Her musical career provided some solace, but the physical demands of touring grew increasingly difficult. The elaborate costumes, once a celebration of her famous physique, now required painful corseting and strategic design to maintain the illusion of ageless perfection. Then came a blow that transcended career concerns. On January 5, 1998, Sonny Bono, her ex-husband, former singing partner, and the father of her daughter, died instantly in a skiing accident at Heavenly Mountain Resort in South Lake Tahoe. He was 62. Though their relationship had been complicated, sometimes contentious, Sonny remained family. At his funeral, Cher delivered a eulogy that revealed the deep bond that had survived their divorce. "Some people were under the misconception that Sonny was short," she said through tears, "but he was bigger than life." Privately, his death triggered a deeper crisis. The man who had discovered her, shaped her early career, and given her her first identity as an artist was gone. Whatever unresolved feelings remained would stay that way forever. "When Sonny died, something in me died too," she later confessed. "No matter what happened between us, he was the first person who believed in me." The loss coincided with a startling revelation about her physical health. Years of performing in heavy wigs and headpieces had caused permanent damage to her hairline. The famous mane that had been her trademark now required increasingly elaborate extensions and wigs to maintain. Additionally, in 1999, at age 53, Cher was diagnosed with a heart condition requiring medication and careful monitoring. The ailment was kept largely private, but it added another layer of vulnerability to a woman the public perceived as indestructible. Her son Elijah's struggles with substance abuse during this period created another source of pain. Like his father, Greg Allman, Elijah battled addiction issues that repeatedly threatened his health and strained his relationship with his mother. "Being a mother is the hardest job," she once said. "You can't fix your child's pain. You can only love them through it and hope they find their way." In her professional life, Cher confronted a music industry increasingly dominated by younger artists with different sounds. Her 1995 album, It's a Man's World, underperformed despite critical praise. Many radio stations refused to playlist a woman in her 50s, regardless of the material's quality. They'd say, "We love the song, but we can't play someone your age," she recalled. "They wouldn't say it to my face, but my team would hear it." The financial realities also shifted. Despite her legendary status, touring became less profitable as production costs soared. The spectacular shows her fans expected, with multiple costume changes, elaborate sets, and large supporting casts, ate into potential profits. Yet scaling back risked disappointing the very audience that had stayed loyal through decades. By the late 1990s, Cher found herself in a position familiar to many aging icons. Too young to retire, too old to be embraced by an industry obsessed with youth, and physically unable to maintain the punishing schedule of her earlier years. Then, Just as the entertainment world seemed ready to relegate her to the nostalgia circuit, Cher staged perhaps the most unexpected comeback in pop music history. Believe, released in October 1998 when Cher was 52, became a global phenomenon. The pioneering use of auto-tune, initially employed to cover vocal limitations caused by her health struggles, created what became known as the Cher effect, a sound that would influence pop music for decades. The song reached #1 in 23 countries and became the biggest hit of her career. The album sold over 10 million copies worldwide. At an age when most pop stars had long since retired, Cher found herself with her first #1 hit in 25 years. The subsequent Do You Believe tour grossed over $200 million, but at a devastating physical cost. Night after night, Cher performed in heavy costumes, high heels, and elaborate wigs despite chronic pain and fatigue. By the tour's end in 2000, she announced it would be her last. "I've been doing this for 40 years," she told the audience at the final show. "It's time." Few believed her. Cher had announced retirements before, but this time the toll on her health suggested she might be serious. Her body was sending unmistakable signals that the grueling life of a touring pop star might finally be beyond even her legendary resilience. Yet retirement proved short-lived. By 2002, financial pressures and the visceral need to perform drew her back to Las Vegas for what was billed as a 200-show residency at Caesar's Palace. The show, Cher, the Farewell Tour, eventually expanded to a 3-year global tour that concluded in 2005. Each night she endured 7 costume changes, flew across arenas on cables, and danced in 6-inch heels, all while battling chronic health issues the public never saw. "There were nights I didn't know if I could go on," she later admitted, "but I'd hear the audience and somehow find the strength." When the tour finally ended in April 2005, Cher was 58 and exhausted beyond measure. This time, the retirement announcement came with more conviction. Her body had reached its limits. The woman who had defied time for decades finally had to acknowledge its passing. Yet, even in this dark period, one thing remained constant: Cher's absolute refusal to surrender to circumstances. Whether battling illness, industry ageism, or personal loss, she continued to reinvent herself against increasingly difficult odds. "I've been up, I've been down, I've been broke, I've been rich," she once said. "The only thing that's certain is that nothing stays the same." At 78, Cher occupies a unique position in American culture, the last legend standing from an era when stars were truly larger than life. While contemporaries like Elvis, Michael Jackson, and Prince died tragically young, and others like Madonna and Tina Turner have largely retreated from public life, Cher remains defiantly, visibly present. But presence isn't the same as connection. The price of her extraordinary longevity has been a profound isolation few can comprehend. Her mother, Georgia, her closest confidant, died in December 2022 at age 96 after a long battle with pneumonia. Cher had cared for her personally, moving her into a custom home on her Malibu property where she could oversee her care. The loss left her without the one person who knew her before fame, who knew Sherilyn, not just Cher. "She was the person I always wanted to impress," Cher said after Georgia's death. "Even with all the success, I still wanted to make her proud. Her relationship with her children remains complicated. Daughter Chastity's transition to Chaz in 2009 initially challenged Cher, who has admitted it took time to fully accept her son's identity despite her longtime advocacy for LGBTQ+ rights. "I had to go through some changes myself to get to where I could accept it completely," she acknowledged with characteristic honesty. With Elijah, her relationship has cycled through periods of Estrangement and reconciliation, complicated by his ongoing health struggles and her own limitations as a mother, often absent during his formative years due to career demands. "I wasn't always there," she once admitted. "I was trying to be a good mother and a star at the same time. Sometimes that's not possible." Romantically, Cher's later years have brought brief connections, but no lasting partnership. A series of relationships with younger men, most notably with A.E. Edwards, 40 years her junior, have provided companionship, but not the deep bond she experienced with Rob Camilletti decades earlier. "At my age, finding someone is nearly impossible," she told an interviewer in 2023. "Most men my age are either married or uninterested in starting over. Younger men are interested, but there's always the question of what they really want." Physically, the cost of decades performing in punishing costumes and high heels has manifested in chronic pain and mobility issues she rarely discusses publicly. Multiple surgeries on her knees and back, the result of years dancing in towering heels, have provided some relief, but not restoration. The voice that made her famous has changed, too. The powerful contralto that belted out "If I Could Turn Back Time" now requires careful management and occasional technological assistance, a reality she acknowledges with her trademark candor. "The voice changes as you age," she said recently. "You either work with what you have or you stop. I'm not ready to stop." Yet amid these challenges, Cher continues to create. Her 2018 album of ABBA covers, inspired by her role in "Mamma Mia! Here We Go Again," reached number 3 on the Billboard charts, making her the only artist to have a top 10 album in 6 consecutive decades. In 2023, she released Christmas, her first holiday album, which featured collaborations with artists ranging from Michael Bublé to Stevie Wonder. Her political activism has intensified with age. Where once she kept her views relatively private to protect her commercial appeal, the elder Cher speaks with unfiltered conviction about causes ranging from climate change to women's rights to refugee assistance. "When you get older, you care less about what people think," she explained. "I'm going to use whatever voice I have left for things that matter." Perhaps the most poignant aspect of Cher at 78 is her relationship with her own mythology. The woman who once seemed to defy aging now faces its reality with a mixture of defiance and acceptance. Recent public appearances show a figure still glamorous but visibly changed, a concession to time that even her legendary willpower cannot overcome. In rare, reflective moments, she has acknowledged the double-edged nature of her famous resilience. "People call me a survivor, and I am," she said in a 2022 interview. "But surviving isn't the same as living. There were years I was just hanging on, not really experiencing life because I was too busy trying to stay relevant." This late-life candor reveals the wisdom that comes only with age. After decades of reinvention, Cher has perhaps found her most authentic self, a woman who has nothing left to prove and no one left to impress. Her legacy transcends hit records or box office receipts. Cher's greatest contribution may be showing multiple generations of women that conventional limitations of age, appearance, or background need not define one's path. "I was never the prettiest, never the most talented, never the most anything," she once reflected. "I just worked harder and lasted longer than anybody else." That longevity has come at immense personal cost. The relationships sacrificed, the physical toll, the constant scrutiny, the inability to ever fully step away from the Cher persona she created. What remains is a woman who, despite unimaginable fame and achievement, still carries the wounds of that dyslexic half-Armenian girl who never quite belonged, who built an empire, but still sometimes wonders if she's enough. As she approaches 80, Cher embodies both triumph and tragedy, the triumph of a self-made icon who refused every limitation society placed on her, and the tragedy of a woman whose greatest strength, her ability to transform, kept the world at a distance. "I've been Cher for so long," she said recently. "Sometimes I forget who Sherilyn was supposed to be." As twilight settles over her Malibu estate, Cher moves from the balcony back inside, past the gold records, the Oscar, the photographs of a life lived in the brightest spotlight imaginable. At 78, she has outlasted them all. The critics who dismissed her, the executives who underestimated her, the partners who couldn't keep pace with her evolution. The last empress of American pop culture presides over a kingdom that, for all its splendor, can feel achingly empty. Yet in that emptiness lies her final lesson for us, that survival itself is an art form, that lasting isn't just about talent or luck, but about the courage to repeatedly shed your skin and step naked into the next version of yourself, even when that process grows more painful with each transformation. If this journey has moved you, please like and share so others can discover it too. And I'm curious, which moment in Cher's story resonated most deeply with you? Was it the girl who couldn't read but found her voice? The woman who reinvented herself against impossible odds? Or the icon who, in her 8th decade, still refuses to be defined by anyone's expectations but her own?